I didn't cry when they gave her the house. I didn't flinch when they called it a wedding gift and handed over the keys like they were giving her a scented candle. I stood in the living room, my feet still sore from helping clean out the garage that same morning, watching as my mother clasped her hands together like she was seeing a dream come true. And maybe she was. Just not mine. "This is where your babies will grow up," she whispered to my sister, her voice thick with happy tears. And then, as if to throw crumbs my way, my father turned to me and said, "We're getting rid of the old couch from the den. You can have it if you want." A couch, a used couch, no ribbon, no smile, no gesture of love, just the hand-me-down remains of their generosity. The couch sat in the back of my hatchback for 3 days because I didn't have the energy to carry it inside. I lived in a third-floor walk-up then, no elevator, no one to help. I just kept moving the car from side to side to avoid tickets and pretending it didn't hurt. My name is Elora. I'm 28. I've paid for everything in my life, including their silence. See, my younger sister Violet always got the best of everything. Even her name, Violet, sounded like a song, while mine sounded like a typo in a fantasy novel. She got the dimples, the good hair, the soft voice that made people lean in to listen. I got overlooked. When Violet was accepted into a private university, my parents co-signed the loans and threw her a send-off party with caterers and a live jazz trio. When I got into the state college with scholarships, they asked if I'd still live at home and help clean the gutters. But I never made it a competition. I never wanted to. I worked 2 jobs to make it through school, graduated early, even helped pay off a little of their mortgage when Dad lost his job. They said thank you once, then moved on. I remember the day I found out Violet and Derek, her fiancé, were being given the house. It wasn't even told to me directly. I was wiping down the kitchen island after breakfast. We'd all come over for brunch because Violet wanted to show off her new ring. Mom was pouring mimosas into champagne flutes and humming some old James Taylor tune when she said it. "Oh, and we're signing the deed over this week. They'll be in before the honeymoon." "Wait," I said. "The house?" "The Maple Street place," she said casually like it was no big deal. "Our house?" I clarified. "No," she laughed. "The one Grandma left us." The house I had asked about last year, the one they said they were still deciding on. "It just made sense," Dad chimed in. "They're starting their life together. You're already settled." Settled? I was living paycheck to paycheck in a 1-bedroom apartment with a leaky window and a landlord who thought replacing pipes was too expensive right now. I didn't argue. I didn't even finish my toast. I just said, "Sounds great," and walked out to cry in the bathroom. Violet had no idea, or at least she pretended not to. A week later, she invited me over to check out the space and asked me to help her move some of Derek's things in. I helped carry a vintage record player into what used to be my grandmother's reading room. The floors still creaked in the exact same spots, the windows still fogged in the afternoon. Everything smelled like lilacs and lemon oil, the scent Grandma always used. I tried not to feel it, but the truth pressed against my chest like a weight. That was supposed to be mine. I didn't say anything until I saw the couch again. The one from our family den, the gift they'd offered me. It was sitting in their garage, still wrapped in the plastic my parents had used to move it. They hadn't even told Violet they offered it to me. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about a couch or a house. This was about erasure. I had been slowly, methodically written out of the family's future, like a typo in a family photo album they wished they could Photoshop away. So I stopped showing up. I stopped answering Mom's gentle, just checking in texts and Dad's once-a-month calls about how's work. I declined Violet's invitation to her bridal shower, then her housewarming, then her baby gender reveal. It was during that silence, that stretch of months where I reclaimed my time, that I found something. A yellowed envelope, stuffed between old utility bills and junk mail, addressed to me in my grandmother's handwriting. I froze when I saw it. She had died 3 years earlier, and no one had mentioned this. Inside was a letter and a will. Not the will, a handwritten one, with a notarized date, a stamp, and her unmistakable signature. The letter was short, written just 6 months before she passed. It read, Elora, I know your parents won't understand this, but I need you to know I want you to have the Maple Street house. It's not much, but I see you. I always have, and I want you to have something that's yours. And just like that, the weight in my chest became fire. The paper shook in my hands as I read it over again. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. My grandmother had always been the only person in our family who really saw me. She didn't fawn over Violet's school plays or her Instagram-worthy brunches. She sat with me in quiet. She gave me books without asking if I'd read them. She asked about my life like it mattered. I remember once, when I was 16, I told her I felt invisible. She held my face in her hands and said, "Then you make noise in the way only truth can." I thought it was poetry back then, but now it felt like a prophecy. The next day, I left work early and took the letter to a probate attorney. His office smelled like coffee and old paper. He wore suspenders and looked like he hadn't blinked since the 90s. But he was sharp, the kind of sharp that scared you a little. He read the will twice, then again, then leaned back and said, "This changes everything." Apparently, there had been two wills. The one my parents had filed with the county after Grandma's passing was clean, typed, and listed both my parents as executors, with the Maple Street house going to the family. But the handwritten one I had? It was dated after the official version. It was signed, notarized, and in this state, that made it legally binding. She wanted it to go to you, he said. And unless someone can prove coercion, fraud, or impairment, it's yours. I swallowed. Hard. You can file to reclaim the property, he said. It'll cause a stir, though. Stir? It would light a match in a house soaked in gasoline. I didn't file, not right away. Instead, I took a copy of the letter and put it in a fireproof box. I placed it beneath my bed, beside a bag of emergency cash and expired passport photos. Then I waited. Not out of fear, out of calculation. See, I wasn't interested in just getting the house. I wanted them to see me get it. The next time Violet called, I answered. "Elle, you're alive," she chirped. "Oh my God, are you mad at me? You've been ghosting the family." I smiled, thin and sharp. Not mad, just processing. "Oh," she said, voice dripping with faux concern. "Well, maybe you should come by. The baby's room is almost done. You won't believe how cute it is. Derek built a cloud bookshelf." Of course he did. "I'll come this weekend," I said, and I did. When I arrived at the Maple Street house, something inside me cracked. The roses Grandma planted were still blooming by the porch. Violet had added a welcome mat that said, "Home is where the heart is," and hung wind chimes where Grandma used to put her bird feeder. Everything looked wrong. And then I walked inside. Violet was showing me around like a real estate agent on Adderall. "So the nursery is here, and we knocked down the divider wall to make this open concept," she said, waving her hand proudly. "You gutted the pantry?" I asked, blinking. "It was too cramped," she said, not noticing how pale I'd gone. "We're going to put a wine fridge there. I used to sneak cookies from that pantry when I was 6. Grandma kept her jelly jars there, her garden gloves, her handwritten recipes. Now it was drywall and quartz counters." Later that evening, as Violet and Derek argued softly over what curtains matched their aesthetic, I wandered into Grandma's old room. It was now a guest room, bare, impersonal, decorated in beige and cream, with throw pillows that looked untouched. I opened the closet, still smelled faintly like lavender. Behind a stack of gift bags, I found a wooden box I recognized instantly, Grandma's sewing kit. I sat on the floor and opened it slowly. Inside was a pair of silver scissors, a spool of navy thread, and a single Polaroid photo of me and Grandma on the porch swing, my arms around her neck, her eyes crinkling into a smile. I didn't cry, but I did feel a rage so quiet it could kill. That night, I called the lawyer and said, "Let's begin the paperwork." The following weeks were a blur of filings, document scans, notarizations, and legal language that made my brain ache, and all the while, I said nothing to my family. I went to dinners. I brought cupcakes to Violet's baby shower. I smiled as my mother raved about the guest list for the baby's christening. And when my father talked about legacy, I nodded like I agreed. But inside, I was sharpening knives. Then came the letter. A formal notice delivered to Violet and Derek by certified mail. Petition to establish rightful ownership of property per addendum to last will and testament of Clara Jensen. They called me within hours. First, it was Dad. You've got to be kidding me, he barked into the phone. This is family business? You think dragging lawyers into this is the answer? You gave them the house, I said calmly. It was never yours to give. Clara didn't mean it that way. She put it in writing. She signed it. She meant it. Don't do this, Elora. This will tear us apart. We were already torn, I said and hung up. Then it was Mom, crying, pleading. We didn't know. We thought we were doing the right thing. By cutting me out, you had your life. Violet needed help. And what about what I needed? Silence. And then, if your grandmother wanted you to have the house, she should have told us. She did, I said. You just didn't listen. The hearing was scheduled for early spring. By then, Violet had stopped speaking to me. She posted cryptic quotes on Instagram like, "Some people want to see you fail just so they can say they helped you." Her friends unfollowed me. Mutual cousins sent awkward texts asking if everything was okay. But I wasn't bothered, because finally, they were seeing me. And I wasn't done yet. Spring came with gray skies and courtroom air so dry it cracked my lips. I sat on the left side of the hearing room, my lawyer flipping through notes like he'd been rehearsing for this day his whole career. Across from us, Violet sat stiffly in a lavender blouse, too pretty for this place. Derek whispered something to her. She didn't look at me. My parents were behind them, somber and stunned, like guests at a funeral no one had prepared for. And maybe that's what it was, the slow death of a family myth, that I would always take less and smile while doing it. The judge, a woman with kind eyes and the patience of a stone, reviewed both wills. She asked measured questions. She paused after each response, like she was tasting the air around it. When my lawyer submitted the notarized letter from Grandma, I watched Violet's jaw tighten. The same letter she hadn't known existed. The one that ruined their perfect Pinterest life. I didn't gloat. I didn't cry. I just sat in my truth. It didn't take long. The judge ruled that the handwritten will was valid and legally binding and ordered the transfer of ownership of the Maple Street property to me, effective immediately. You could hear a pin drop, if not for the sound of Violet's entire life crumbling behind her eyes. Mom gasped. Dad muttered, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. And me? I blinked once, then said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The fallout came fast. Violet texted me the next morning, "You stole our home? I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. 2 days later, Derek emailed a proposed settlement. I sent it to spam. By the weekend, my parents asked to meet as a family. I declined. Instead, I walked into the Maple Street house alone, carrying only a set of fresh keys and a single suitcase. The walls echoed in that soft, familiar way. The air still smelled like lilac. Grandma's sewing kit sat where I left it. In the living room, the couch, had been shoved into the corner like they didn't know what to do with it. I laughed. A quiet, bitter laugh. Then I dragged it outside and left it on the curb. Let the neighborhood pick through their leftovers. I was done accepting crumbs. The renovation took 6 months. I didn't change much. I kept the floors the same. I repainted the pantry door and put the jelly jars back where they belonged. I replaced Violet's Live, Laugh, Love signs with framed photos of Grandma and me. But the biggest change? I opened the house up to others. Quietly, carefully. I let a struggling student rent a room during her semester abroad. I hosted book clubs in the sunroom. I built a little garden in the backyard with a plaque that said, "I see you, Grandma Clara." One Sunday, as I sipped tea by the window, my phone buzzed. A new message from Mom. "We miss you. It's not the same without you. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because for once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like a background character in someone else's life. I felt whole, unapologetic, home. I set the phone down and walked to the porch, breathing in spring. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to love me right. I had done it myself.